Today is August the 2nd, 2001. My name is Harley W. Slaback. I was born February 4th, 1924 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. This is about my experiences leading up to and as a POW, a prisoner of war. I went in service April 10th, in 1943, went to Fort Jackson, South Carolina, took my basic training there with the 106th Infantry Division. After training, we went to Murfreesboro, Tennessee for maneuvers. After maneuvers, we went to Camp Atterbury, Indiana for further training. I shipped out of the outfit early because they needed replacements in Germany. I went to England, trained troops in England, and then the division came over. They were short of personnel, so I rejoined the division. It was bang, bang. We were across the channel into Le Havre, and the rest of the troops unloaded in Le Havre. We got everything together, loaded on trucks, and went up to the front lines. When we got in the trucks, it was cold, and there was no heat in them, and they had the iron floorboards. And when we got to the front line, when we jumped out of the trucks, most of us went to our knees because we had frozen feet. We got into the front lines. We pulled our guns in where the 2nd Division had pulled their guns out of. The Germans were sitting across the hill with their binoculars, watching every move we made. Well, nothing happened, but we could hear their trucks and machinery and everything else going on behind the lines. We pulled guard duty, and in the Hergen Forest, the trees were so close together and there was so much snow on them that when we pulled guard duty, the Germans walked within 3 or 4 feet of us, and we never knew they were there because they were camouflaged, and it was so thick and there was so much snow on the trees. Well, the 16th of December, I went on a patrol, and we got behind the German lines. The reason we knew that is because we could hear the Germans talking. We turned around, got out of there, and were going up a little ravine when the Germans attacked us. And they really attacked us. I had a bazooka, and Sergeant King had the ammunition, so I hollered down and I said, "Hey, King, bring me up the ammunition." Well, he got in a crouch, started up, and this German gunner in the Tiger tank had an 88 millimeter gun on it, which is a cannon. He tracked King, pushed the button, and King was gone. Well, then our officers told us to surrender. Now, the first thing you do when you surrender is throw the clip out of your rifle one way, throw the bolts another way, and break it over your knee, which I did. One of the other fellows was standing next to me, and he forgot to take the bolt out of his carbine, and when he broke it over his knee, he shot himself in the foot. I had to laugh at that because I thought that was a little humorous. Well, the German come up to me and he patted my pocket to find out if I was carrying anything. Well, he hit one of my pockets and he reached out his hand to signify that he wanted it. I reached in my pocket and pulled him out a live grenade. I handed it to him. He went up about a foot in the air and about a foot backward and hollered, "Gnad." At that time, I'm surprised that he did not shoot me. Well, they got us all together and started marching us back to the rear. We went past a low building, chicken coop or something. It had long overlapping roof on it, and there were Americans frozen, stacked up like cordwood. Their shoes and their little winter caps were missing. Well, we went on back to the further back, and we had not had any food or water at that time. We passed a mound of dirt, and some of the guys jumped out of line and went over and scratched in the dirt and found rutabagas. I jumped out of line and went over and picked up 4 rutabagas. Well, at that time, the German guards got smart and come over, and again, I am very thankful I was not shot. I went back in line, wiped the rutabaga off, and started eating it. We marched back in further in Germany. One night we stayed in an old school building that was bombed out, and the floors had holes in them, and the Germans didn't seem to care if we fell through or not. We stayed there one night. One other night, we stayed in a railroad yard, and I slept in a little cubicle. But then they started to put us in boxcars. Now, the German boxcar is much smaller than the American. They had just brought horses up in these boxcars. They did not bother to clean the stuff from the horses out or the hay. We were packed in there like sardines. They started us across Germany by rail. We got into Frankfurt on the Main a couple of days before Christmas. One of the big Pathfinders, which is a British airplane, come over, dropped flares all around the railroad yard, which lit it up brighter than day. And then in the next minute or so, the big bombers come over and were unloading the heavy bombs on us. It scared me, and we were in the boxcar, and it was shaking. So I took my steel helmet, and there is slots in where there had a window. I broke the slats out, dove through the window, landed on my feet, don't ask me how. I took my steel helmet off again, broke the lock off the door, and let all of the troops out of the boxcars. Well, we spread out, and after it was over, we were like sheep. We did not know where to go, so they rounded us up and put us back in the boxcar. We got into Bad Orb, Germany, which was our home for the next few months. We walked up a long hill. They interrogated us, and when they interrogate you, all you're supposed to do is give your name, rank, and serial number, which I did. The German officer asked me some more questions, and all I give him was my name, rank, and serial number. Well, he thought, young man, I'm going to teach you a lesson. So he says, go outside and stand at attention until we call you back in. Well, there was about 18 or 20 others of us out there. I wasn't the only one. And after a while, they called us back in, and they said, we captured your records, so we do not need any information from you. They give us a hunk of German black bread, which is about probably 60% sawdust. That was our supper that night, but the Americans, being used to a little better food than that, threw most of it under the barracks in the latrine and threw it away. The next morning, the Germans went out and collected all of that bread, and it was subtracted from our ration. German prison camp was a mini compound because they had a lot of nationalities there, and the Americans were all in one compound, but they had barbed wire fences around pretty near every one of the barracks. We had absolutely no heat in the barracks. We slept on a wooden bunk, no mattress, no pillows, absolutely nothing. They did give us one blanket that was about as thick as a gunny sack, if you know what a gunny sack is. But life in the camp was very hectic because the Germans were always hassling us. We were not too cooperative with them. One morning they didn't let us out, and we wondered why. Come to find out, one of the Americans had gotten out of the barracks, went over to the kitchen, and was getting himself to eat when the German guard surprised him. The American picked up a hatchet and commenced to work the German guard over. He took about 68 or 69 hunks out of the man's head and shoulders. He lived. The American went back to the barracks. He had blood all over him. He got rid of his clothes. I don't know what he did because we did not have a change of clothes. The Germans got us outside and lined us up. The guards in the towers, you could tell that they wanted to get some action and wanted to kill us. The guards on the ground with their German dogs were ready to take us on. They said they were going to call names off and take us and kill us. I was standing next to a friend who was also in my outfit by the name of Dan Giese. Dan was from Carlisle, Pennsylvania. He was pretty much an illiterate. He could read a little bit and write his name. Dan told me, he says, Sergeant, he says, if they call your name out, I'm stepping forward. And I told him, no, Dan, you can't do that. He says, you're married. He says, you got an education and a life ahead of you. He says, I have nothing ahead of me. He says, I am stepping off. Fortunately, they found out who did it, and the guy was taken down to the town and kept in the jail down there. We were allowed 1 armload of wood per day to keep our barracks warm. I went out one day and I volunteered, and I put wood in my pockets and wood under my arms and had my arms full of it, and I staggered out. All they had to do was get outside the fence, and then they could help you. Our fare consisted of a cup of warm water, supposed to be tea, but it was made out of bark from trees. It was colored. That was our breakfast. For lunch, we had usually nothing. For supper, they give us a canteen cup mostly full of rotten potatoes, carrots, or whatever else they had. It was not too nourishing. They dipped the cup in one night, and it hit something. Well, the rule was if you were in line and they hit something, that was yours. Well, they pulled out the front knee of a horse that had been killed by the Americans when they strafed the convoy coming up the hill to bring our food to us. Well, I took the bone. I had a piece of glass because we were not allowed sharp knives or anything. I took the glass and I got the muscle and the marrow out of the bone, and I cooked it in a little can for a couple of days until I could eat it. One other guy got a horse's head, and he cleaned what little meat was off of it. The Germans did not care about us because they did not have enough food for themselves, so they were not going to feed an American. I got 1/164th of a Red Cross package there. I had some cigarettes when I came in. I did not smoke. I never have smoked. And I traded these cigarettes, believe it or not, for other people's rations of food, which was a little slice of German black bread. One of the fellows that I grew up with was in the prison camp also. He died because he wanted to die. He gave up. His name was Bobby Thompson. He just pure gave up and died. It was the hardest thing for me to do when I went back home, is to tell his parents that he did not have the will and the desire to live. They were buried outside of the compound, and when they took them out, they had a wagon with great big old-fashioned wheels on it and just boards on there, and they usually threw a blanket over the guy when they took him out to burial. His feet and his head were sticking out, and they had two long poles that our troops used to pull him out with. We were bombed a couple times, and I seen my first jet in Germany back in 1945. They flew over the camp, and there was no sound, and we did not know what they were. I watched a jet, a German jet, and a P-51 dogfight, which was very interesting because our P-51 made a chump out of the German who had the superior jet. We stayed in there until April 10th, when we were liberated. I went down into the town, got a mess kit from one of the guys that liberated us, and I went through and I had some food. Well, the second time I got mine, the mess sergeant said, that's enough, we don't mind feeding you one. We went back up into the compound. They loaded us on the trucks, took us to Fulda, Germany, to Camp Lucky Strike. There they deloused us, put us on a ship, and we went back to the States. I was still hungry. We had not been issued any clothing. So one of the guys in line taught me to take my knife, and when they punched my meal ticket, to take the knife and to needle or weld the little punch out that they did not get, something like our shads that they call them, and we could go through the line again. I think the third time a lieutenant caught me and said, that was enough, Sergeant. You'll go through the line once. We got back to the States. They debriefed us. I was sent home. My wife and my mother had prepared a Christmas dinner for me, Christmas tree and everything. I ate 2 bites and could not eat any more. I went to the doctor, got some pills, still did not help me, so I went back to Miami Beach, and my wife and I had 30 days of R&R there. But I was so sick, I could not enjoy it, so I went to the Air Force Hospital down there, and they admitted me. My wife stayed for a few days later, and then she went back home. They flew me to Bruns General Hospital in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where I was put in what they call the death row because of malnutrition, and they did not know what was wrong with us. I had lost about 40 to 45 pounds while I was in prison camp, and I had not gained any of it back yet. I was told by a Captain Atwater that I would never live 5 years unless I had a real good life. Well, I looked him in the eye and I said, "Sir, I'm going to water the flowers on your grave." I didn't want to die. The Germans didn't kill me. We had been strafed and everything else, and I just didn't want to. So they discharged me out of there. I went to Woods VA Hospital, stayed there a while, and went home. Never went back to the hospital. I'm 77 and a half years old. I think I'm in pretty good condition, and I was asked the other day how I come through this, and the only thing that I can think of was I had a belief and faith in the good Lord, and I think He is the one that got me through it. Thanks, Tony.